All right, everybody, welcome to this week's TE session, Introduction to Scouting, one of my personal favorite topics. Today, we have from Team 4910, Aleem, to introduce us to scouting. So, take it off, Aleem.
Thank you. So my name is Aleem Lakhtawala, and just a little bit about myself. I am the scouting captain for East Cobb Robotics, Team 4910 for First FRC. And just a little bit about myself. I've witnessed all three levels of the scouting that I'm about to show you, but I started only a few years ago, so hopefully um, I'll be able to reach out a little better. And it's a collaboration of a lot of different teams, such as 2974 and 6705. So it's just a combination of a lot of people. Okay. Um, so before we start today, I would like to give you a small outline of what we're going to be doing today. So we're going to start off with scouting team basics. What is it and why do we need it? Then we're going to go through the three different levels of scouting. And in between, I'll be showing you how to implement statistical formulas to ameliorate your own program. And finally, I'll go over how to implement this into an actual competition. So what is a scouting team? When you think of FIRST, you often think of build, programming, and electrical. But scouting isn't necessarily the first thing that comes to mind. A scouting team is a growing phenomenon in FIRST, especially Georgia FIRST, as it gains more and more importance. At its basic level, it's a group that collects, analyzes, and utilizes other team performance during competition, and it's often done with a specialized scouting software that's specific to each competition, which has a digital platform. It usually consists of 8 to 10 members, but as we'll go on, I'll show you how it really goes from anywhere to 5 or 6 to 13 or 14. Scouting teams considers quantitative and qualitative scouting. So quantitative scouting is more of numerical data, hard data points, versus qualitative scouting is more like opinions of how a team did during a match and how compatible they might be, which isn't really being able to captured with just numbers. So I encourage both types in my own scouting program, but I will be specifically going over the quantitative versions. So why do we need a scouting team? Does it really have any benefits? Is it really a standard part of FIRST? Because like I mentioned before, robotics, when one thinks of robotics, one doesn't necessarily think of data. So scouting team is needed to have a data-driven approach that eliminates human instinct. Human instinct is great, but when it comes to unbiased evaluation, it's not always encouraged in scouting. And hard data is better, especially when you have over 30 teams in a competition. As an alliance captain, scouting is critical. Forming alliances requires data on other teams for a good fit with perceived deficiencies. And as you'll see later on, the highest ranked teams might not necessarily be the best choices due to initial problems, etc. For example, in the last 6 competitions in Georgia during the 2018 season, only in 3 did the first alliance captain pick the second alliance captain, and that shows how Georgia is expanding so that it considers other teams when it's making their decision, not just ranking points. And finally, for all teams, scouting is great as a strategy-making tool, and it will be critical towards your alliance captain and towards your drive captain during qualification matches. So we're going to warm up with pencil and paper, which is what I consider level 1, and we're going to analyze the critical values in last year's game. So to be honest, pencil and paper does not sound high-tech, but it works. Pencil and paper these days needs neither pencil nor paper. Instead, there are digitized platforms such as Google Forms and Fast FRC Scouter, which is a great app, which I'll be going over later. Pencil and paper is a great tool if time is being cut short or if you don't have a specific team designed for scouting. And I always say to first teams who approach me over the matter, if you're new to scouting or if you're new to FIRST, it's always best to go with this level because having a team go from no scouting to scouting is a huge change in itself. So let's go over this together. We're going to create a new form, and I'm going to have you guys create 2 or 3 fields from last year's game. So let's watch a match really quick. Can anyone give me like 2 values, like autoline or cubes involved? Let's go with that. So I'm assuming everyone knows what each of these is. So let's just watch a quick match. I'm sorry for the yelling. It's really irritating, if there is any. So as you're watching, try to count through cubes involved and auto line, and we'll input this inside a single match. Oh dear. Okay. So that's an example of a match that would go on in 2018. So together, let's create a basic form for that match. So let's create a new form. Is it gonna? Okay. From Google Forms. So Google Forms is just kind of the basic version of it, and let's just call this Robo Jackets. So I always say in a scouting form, the first thing you should always do is have the name. So you can have the person's name whenever they collect correct data, or whenever they mess up, you can go after them. So let's have a new question, okay? And let's make it short answer, name, okay? And for the second one, let's put auto line. And for auto line, you want to have yes or no. So let's have multiple choice, yes or no. And finally, let's have the cubes involved. So there's a variety of ways you can do this. You can have multiple choice. There's another way you can do it, which is linear scale from 1 to 9 or 0 to 9. So either one, it's really up to you. Okay. So, and let's save this. Alright, so let's try to make, let's see if it lets me make, it's not going to let me do that. So now I have a sample form, okay? Yeah, let's go back. How do I? Alright. Alright, good. And sorry, this is being really weird right now. Give me a second. Alright, here we go. Okay. So we saw a sample of how to create a form, but the main issue with that is that it's not very precise. When you have at least 30 different teams, and there's at least 100 different matches. That's what 3,000 different forms, and being able to comb through that is virtually impossible. So instead, I've created a sample form with some entries. Okay, and you can see here in the responses that it doesn't really make any sense. I've put in 4 different matches, as you can see here, and overall, you don't get anything from it because it's not specific. So let me show you an alternative to that. Okay. So this is Fast FRC Scouter. It's an app created by Team 4256, which enables data capture during competition. It's created specifically for the competition. However, it's only for iOS, so you might have to pull together all your Apple devices. It's very user-friendly and easy to understand, and you don't need Wi-Fi. So it's great for FRC requirements. There are other apps, but from maybe a dozen apps I've seen on the App Store or the Play Store, this one is by far the best. The creator is easy to reach out to, and it's really simple. If you were to go for a level 1 scouting program, this is what I would recommend, because the data that comes from that is really, really easy to read. This is from a single event, and I just had OPR versus number of matches, and you can clearly see spikes in the OPR, which is what I would recommend for our first team. So the big downside of using this is that it is alliance dependent, and you still need to put in your own work. So let's move on to level 2, which I call digital data collection. And the difference between digital data collection and level 1 is that it's a step up from just collecting data. You actually apply some level of analysis, especially with Excel and Google Sheets. Now, I know that Excel and Google Sheets sounds like really basic tools, but they're really powerful, and while they're a spreadsheet and not necessarily a database tool, they're incredibly useful. Excel can be used to rank and sort teams based on their skills, and I'll show you some more functions later on. So let's create a demonstration. We're going to export the data that we had earlier, and we're going to create an easy pivot table and graph. Let's go back here. So we have all this data. What we're going to do is we're going to export it to Google Sheets. Okay. Yeah. So you can see here that the 4 responses that I had from earlier, they're all over here with the in a CSV format, which is comma separated values. You have the name, team number, auto line, cubes and vault, match number. Now this is where it's a matter of preference. You can have you can do this in Google Sheets. I prefer Excel for this method, so I'm just going to download it to Excel. Hopefully it'll do that. Yep. Alright, it's just going to take a while. Alright. So now we see the same values that we collected earlier, and we're able to see it in spreadsheet format. And with this, you can do a lot of things. So first things first, we're going to copy the data into a new sheet. And I find this especially useful because I'm sad to say more than once I've accidentally deleted all of my data, and I've had to start the import process again, and I've had to try to explain to people why it's not working, and it's just not worth it. So let's copy the data, all of it, and let's do that for all of that. And this becomes a little more complicated when you have like 30 teams and hundreds of matches and many more limiters, but for now I'm hoping this is just a simple example. Now you have all these values into another spreadsheet. Now what we want to do is change this yes, yes, no, no format into something that a computer is able to read. Because when a computer sees yes or no, it doesn't understand what you're talking about. So I'm not trying to, hopefully this is pretty basic, but we're going to apply a simple if statement. So if it's equal to yes, we're going to give it a Boolean value of 1 or 0. So if it's yes, we're going to apply it as a 1. And if it's no, we're going to apply it as a 0. So if it's yes, we'll give it 1, else, and 0. And hopefully, with any luck, it'll work. All right. So now you saw how that yes turned into a 1. And now for the rest of them, it should become 1, 1, 0, 0. And it does. So we've translated those string values of yes to numeric integers. The final thing I'd like to show you with Excel is how to create a pivot chart or pivot table from this. So if we highlight this and insert pivot table, we can collect all that data and we can create this. And it doesn't look like much, but hopefully it will. So it looks a little weird right now. So what we're going to do is we're going to factor by team number, and now you can see the sum of the auto line and sum of cubes involved, which clearly isn't a readable format. So instead what we'll do is we'll put it at average. And now you can see how it makes a little more sense and in context. So this tells us that on average, 4910 is able to get the auto line every time, but they get 2.5 cubes in the vault on average, whereas 254 can get 5.5 on average. And the next thing I'll show you is why average is not necessarily the best thing, but it's still pretty well. So from this, let's create a pivot chart, basic chart, and you can see how this creates a visual approach to seeing that data. And again, when you have a lot of different teams, this will become a lot more apparent and its use. This might seem like it might be the same thing as the fast FRC Scouter, but it has one key advantage, and that is that this is your own. When you want something specific from it, you can manipulate that data to yourself. You don't have to reach out to someone else. So that's why I would recommend moving forward to this, even though it might seem like a little bit more work and less comprehensive. Okay, let's start. Go back to the presentation. Sorry, this is taking kind of a long time. All right. Great. So now we've kind of seen how we can use Excel and Google Sheets to our advantage. And we went from collecting simple data points from Google Forms into something a lot more comprehensive. So before going on to the level 3, which is Tableau, I would like to take a quick detour into data analysis, which is applying statistical formulas to manipulate your data points. It's an expansion on graphing the numbers you receive, and I'm going to show you a few things that we use in stats, such as weighted average and maximum, and which teams can best enhance your lines. So there's a formula on the next screen. I would encourage you guys not to memorize it or copy it, just kind of understand it. So a simple average has its limitations, and let's take an example of that. Say any random team puts 1, 2, 2, 1, 6, 2, 5 cubes in the scale. Now the average of that is about 2.5, but you know that they're able to do 5 or 6 in a match. So if you just went with average, this wouldn't show up as much at all. But a maximum is much more meaningful in this case because it shows something's capability rather than what they do every time. Maximum is especially useful in a strategy-based game where a robot might be needed in different tasks. So a big deficiency of maximum is that if one person accidentally puts 10 instead of 1, for example, it will mess the whole thing up. And that's why we have names, so we can yell at them if they mess up. So the next thing I'd like to cover is weighted average, which gives some factors more weight than others. And in the next slide, I have a short mathematical thing. So you have 3 different metrics, with their raw scores being 4, 3, and 30. Now, those look so wildly different that they don't make sense. I mean, how can you compare 3 to 30? It's like comparing apples and oranges. So instead, what we would like to do is apply a weight. And you apply the weight by multiplying it by that raw score. And now you can see that those numbers, while they're still different, they're much more evened out, and you can compare it better. And you can take the average. So one last thing before showing you that is the difference between weighting versus leveling. So weighting is increasing values more significant to the team. So for example, in the 2017 season, this season, say you had the auto line versus the cubes in the scale. For example, if you thought auto line was more important, you might give auto line a weight of 5 and not give scale a weight. On the other hand, you can also use leveling, which brings values with different ranges to the same level. So in Steamworks, if anyone remembers that, there were teams that shot hundreds of balls into the boilers, versus they could put 6 gears onto the airships. Now, 6 and 100 seems like totally different, but if you level them so that they meet somewhere in the happy middle, you can compare them at a better level to see which one's actually more important. Because just because some team does more for thing doesn't necessarily mean it's more important. So either or both can and should be used in the level 2 of scouting. So let's see this. This is our data from earlier. We have pay close attention to the auto line where it's 1, 1, 0, 0. Now, say you're part of a team that thinks that auto line is more important than cubes and balls, and you want to apply a weight to it. You would multiply the values in auto line by 2 to get a weighted auto line of 2, 2, 0, 0. Now, when you're totaling these, this is again the original data, you add the different metrics together and you get the totals, 1 and 3, 1 and 2, 0 and 6, 0 and 5. However, after you're weighted, you can get a weighted total so that you can see that those are much more comparable, and the totals kind of show you how well a team does overall, and that can factor some weights in. So now we have a pivot table, average of total. So this is the weighted totals for 254 versus 4910. Completely made up numbers, but as you see when they're weighted, 4910 almost comes up close to 254, whereas when you take away the weights, it's much lower. So that versus that. So that's why weighting is a little more important as it comes to first. So finally, let's get to Tableau. Tableau is level 3, and I would highly recommend that people go to the level 1 and 2 first before attempting Tableau, because Tableau is a lot more, I'm not going to say difficult because it really isn't necessarily, but it's more complicated per se, and hopefully I'll be able to show you that. So Tableau, it improves statistical analysis, and it has compelling visual experience, which is a better way of saying it graphs better than Excel. It's an official first program. That means it's free for competition, and recently I found this out. Tableau actually gives students a 1-year free trial by just submitting student information. So that's really handy in practicing before an actual first competition, because especially if there's not a specific dedicated scouting team, you want to have some practice, you get it done quickly rather than stretching it out over 6 weeks. And one of the main things that Tableau has an advantage over Excel is that it has dashboards, which allows a user interactive display that allows the person to go further with sublevels. So let's have a demonstration with Tableau. So what we're going to do is organize data and create a simple dashboard. So let's escape from that. And let's go back here, or let's try to go back here. Oh, let's see, there. Okay, so we have all this data right here in sheet 1 versus sheet 2. We're going to import this data to Tableau so we can see a better graphical approach. So let's see. I'm going to pull up Tableau on my computer. Okay, and we're going to connect an Excel file. And first things first, we need to save this so that the data actually transfers. Otherwise, it'll just give me really basic data. So we're going to connect it to Excel, and we're going to connect it to RoboJackets Forms 2. And over here, we have the difference between sheet 1 versus sheet 2. So I see here sheet 1 is the raw data, and sheet 2 is in pivot table format. We're going to keep the raw data for now, but you can mess around with this on your own time. This is just a little more simple. So we're going to drag and drop, and we're going to wait while it loads. Okay. So as you can see here, it gives you the data for everything that you need. You have team number, auto line, cubes involved, and match number. And the reason we have match number is as you go on and on, you'll get to a point where you can see a team's development over time to see that, hey, if they were bad at first, but they did better as they went along, that shows up, and you're able to give it a more weight. So for now, we won't use it. It's just good practice to see how they did before. Yeah, and I'm just going to change this to string because otherwise it'll keep telling me that it's a number, and it'll try to give me like number conversions. So we're going to move this up here, and let's see if I can get this right. So let's have team number as our filter, and we're going to do it against cubes involved. And that looks kind of weird because it's sum. So we're going to change that from sum to maximum, as we said before. Okay? And let's do auto line. Let's do average. Okay, so you can see how this is showing two different rows versus a single column, and that factors in different filters and measures against different teams. And this looks really basic right now, but imagine this happening across a dozen different values and 30 or 40 different teams. Having all that information rather than having 30 different graphs on Excel, you could just have this on one simple sheet right here. So the last thing I'm going to show you with Tableau is called a dashboard. Now dashboards are not complicated, but they require a lot of practice. And I'm not sure if I'm going to get this right in my first try, but I will do my best. So we're going to create a simple dashboard that allows us to, when we click on a team, we can see their stats. So let's do this. Let's have team number right here, and we have all the teams versus measure names, okay? For the next part, we're going to do team number and measure names. Let's do that again. Okay, that's being weird. All right, that's fine. Let's just keep that there. We're going to do it against measure values. So we have all these different values, but we're going to pick and choose which ones we want. So we're going to keep auto line, and let's make that average again, versus maximum of cubes involved. And the other one, which is match number, we're going to keep out. And the number of records, which is what this is, we're going to keep out as well. That just shows how many matches they played in total. You probably don't need that. So now let's go create a dashboard. So we go to dashboard, new dashboard. We're gonna have sheet 2, come on, versus sheet 3. Okay. There. Alright, that's not the best way to show you. Okay. Alright. So you have this, and now we're going to apply an action to the dashboard. Okay. And we're going to add an action. And to be honest, you don't necessarily need to know how this works or why this works. You just kind of need to know that it works. And I would recommend that if you really want to know more, to go onto like a YouTube channel and research that, because they have a lot more comprehensive stuff, and there's a lot more you can do with this. We're just going to go over this. We're selecting that. We're going to exclude all values. And it took me quite a bit of trial and error, and the Tableau community is generally pretty useful in this, because someone just off the internet was like, all you need to do is this and it'll work. So yeah, we did okay. And now hopefully, I don't know if you can see this because it is being a little picky today, but when we click on 4910, it shows the individual values of 4910. Whatever. Okay. And then for 254, we see the individual values of 254. 4910, 254. So when you have, again, 30 different teams, you can just sort out all of these, and it'll arrange it numerically and just go, all right, we have 254 in this end, and if your drive coach asks you, all right, pull me up stats for 254. I don't need to go through every single data point. I don't have to do Control F and search it up. All I have to do is just one simple click, and I have all the values. And again, this is just 2 different ones. In real competition, you should have about a dozen. So that will pull up an entire range of statistics that you can just vomit at your drive coach. And that way, you won't be in trouble. Right. Let's continue here. So the last thing I want to talk about today was competition day tips. Okay, all of the stuff that I've showed you so far is mainly theoretical. You can implement this at home, but something's going to go wrong at competition, as it so often does. So here's just a few things that I've learned over 2 years, and hopefully you can implement that. So number 1, keep scouters fresh. If you have a large team, you can implement a rotation system. If you have a small team, I would say that it's better to let the scouters miss 5 or 6 matches than not give them a break. Because I know it seems dumb, like how can they get tired? They're just sitting there and typing in values. They will get tired. So I would recommend that rather than having the quality decline over time, give them a 5 to 6 match break, let them do whatever they want, let them come back fresh. And I would really have someone enforce this to make sure that no one's on their phones while they're scouting. Make sure to keep all devices charged. This sounds really simple. I messed it up at Worlds. They ran out of charge, and we missed the first 20 matches, and I had to frantically run all over the place looking for a place to just plug it in. And teams are not happy when you ask them to give up their charging ports. So make sure they're charged the night before. Make sure that you bring them in, and make sure you have a backup plan, because if worse comes to worse, you want to have that data. And finally, don't record a robot that doesn't show up to the match or that just falls over. This took me a while to learn, but imagine a robot having 7 or 8 matches during qualifications. Qualifications. Now imagine in one of those matches, they don't show up. In one of those matches, they fall down. They might be a great robot, but that one will skew the average. And that's one of the reasons why I say average isn't always the best thing. But it's even better to just not record it at all if they fall over, because it doesn't show their true capabilities. it shows like a one-time random event that occurs. You should always keep it in mind that, hey, if it's going on over and over again, something's wrong. But if they don't show up for the first 3 matches, especially in initial competitions, don't record it, and then in the end, when they do show up, you can have that data for yourself. So finally, what we're going to go over is the seating system. And this is 971 seating system. It has 13 different positions. It has 6 scouts, a data entry person, a typist, 3 note scouts, a runner to the stands, and a stands master. That's 13 people. I'd say the average Georgia team is 13 people. So this system works great for 971, and I would recommend it if you do have a 40-person team. But what about Georgia? Obviously, it's way too impractical to implement all these people and not allocate any of them to programming or pits or seating. So full disclosure, I did not make this. 971 made it. But I'm just going to show you the basic things of what they do. So you have the 6 scouts that collect quantitative data, and the data entry person pulls data continuously from the tablets or the phones so that they can upload this to a huge spreadsheet, or probably something better than 971, who knows. You have 3 note scouts, and what they would be in charge of is qualitative scouting, taking notes on the robots, recording when they fall over, recording when they don't do as planned, recording when they don't do the strategy. Then they have a typist, who just types all those notes. They have a stands master who's the leader, runs the whole thing, and they have a runner. The runner is critical, and a lot of teams actually don't address this in their scouting systems, but it's really important to achieve a harmony between the scouting team and the drive team, because it's all fun and games, like sitting in the stands, recording the data. But then when you go onto the drive field, you know that they have a different perspective. If they didn't follow the strategy as planned, if they were rude, you don't want someone like that on your team. So getting that data is critical. So the runner gives the data to the drive team before a match to tell them what strategy to implement. And as a result, the drive team gives back the runner their own notes and thoughts on how a match went. So instead of this 13-person system, you're going to see this great editing. So all of those 13 people can be reduced to 6. You're going to have the 5 people as normal, 5 scouts. The 6th person is going to be the special person. They're going to be the stand scout, as seen here. They're going to be the runner. They're going to be the data entry. And they're going to be the qualitative analysis. Now, that sounds next to impossible, and it is. But, yeah, you're going to get... I've done this too many times. They're going to be the person who picks up those 2 tablets or 3 tablets and scout 3 robots at once. They're going to be the person who kind of leads the scouting team. And it is difficult. And so great way to do that is outsource the work. Outsource it to parents and mentors. They'd be happy. They're almost always happy to help. And even if the data they collect is kind of wrong, not kind of wrong, but maybe a little iffy, at some point you can't pick and choose on what you want. And they're a great source of free work. Kind of. So, yeah, the Red Scout will go, that one person is going to, they need the best snacks, they need the best everything, but they can take control of all of this. And again, if you have 40 people on your team, that's great, but if you only have 15, that's what I would recommend. And if you're truly crazy, you can have a 5-person scouting team. I don't know how you do that, but you can. So thank you. That's it for now. Do you guys have any questions? Yeah, Sarah.
So 4910, I'm assuming uses Tableau.
Yes.
Can we see your version of it? Obviously, I mean, last
Yeah.
season's data isn't.
Yeah.
current.
Okay. Yeah,
so
sure.
that we can see what you're talking about with like the dashboards and how useful it was to you during the competition.
Okay. Yeah, I'll show you my mentors are gonna kill me.
That's fine.
It's
Okay.
okay.
They have to sign a form saying they don't do that.
Okay.
We're not liable.
So I'm not gonna show you like every single algorithm that goes through it because I've spent like a lot of
You don't
time.
need to show us that. I just want to see what it looks like.
Okay. If you guys see anything weird on Google Drive, just ignore it.
Trace those sweet
Okay, that's not
videos.
it. I'm gonna have to like search around for it. I have it somewhere. No, I feel obligated now. Just- Alright, you know what, let's just go to Tableau directly. Okay, I'm pulling it up right now. Let's see, okay. We have data right here, and it's just loading. I haven't opened it in a while. Okay, shoot.
Expected.
Here goes nothing. Okay, this doesn't look like a lot, and it isn't. But I have data on every team. This is just autonomous cubes, and then there's teleop switches, all sorts of different things. So I actually implemented the dashboard I just showed you into here. So anyone have a team name like Walton? That's always great. You have Walton. You can see all their statistics. For us. All our statistics. Yeah, I'm so dead. And what's even, yeah.
How often do you use weighted averages? Do you use that in any of your Tableau sheets from this past year?
This past year, I tried a new approach and didn't use it. It didn't work out for me that well, so I just eliminated totals altogether. But in 2017, I used totals, and that worked out really well because there were so many different factors like defensive, gears, and scale, autonomous, balls. So, yeah. And let's see if this final thing works. No, it doesn't. But what this should do is, this is really outdated. It's 6 months ago. But what this should do is show you like how it works across each match. So how they do for each match. So, yeah.
So, like open up another sheet with each match and shows what happened.
Yeah. Let's see if I can find it. All right.
Do you guys track trends like of improvement
Yes, we do.
using the individual match?
Yeah.
Another question for you about weighted averages. When you have used it, how do you come up with the actual weights for it? Is that just a guess, or do you actually have a
So,
specific approach?
there's two ways you can do it. One is you can guess. You can guesstimate how well, and that works pretty well. I'd say better than I thought it would. Another way to do it is kind of have a point spreadsheet. So, for example, in the 2017 game, you could shoot, I think, about 20 balls or 30 balls in autonomous, and that would be the same as getting 3 gears or 4 gears inside the airship. So you can kind of apply that and say 4 times 7.5. Now that's approximately the same. So there's really two ways you can do that. Right, yeah. Let's see if I can pull up the spreadsheet. I may have deleted it, but I'll try my best. So yeah, we have Columbus and Galileo, and these are individual tablet imports that we have. Yeah, so I changed all of this so that it's better. Oh, there we go. So yeah, all those null values are like because the tablets aren't with me right now, but if you apply all of that, you should see, oh, there we go, something like this is what you should see. These are just tablet imports. A better version would be maybe a 2017, and that's even less likely to be there, but you know what, let's just give it a try.
So do you use your own custom scouting app for the tablet imports?
No, we actually have, oh, okay. Well, we actually have our, we use an app, I think it's called, yeah, Form Express Pro, because we generously received a donation from someone for 6 tablets, and we managed to get the app completely legally off the App Store or the Play Store, and yeah, so it's a really simple data entry form. You just type in the values. It's not very aesthetically pleasing, but it works. Other ways to do it would be just using Google Forms on people's phones if you don't have it, or Fast FRC Scouter. So this might be a better way. So we have weights over here. So these are weights that apply to each one. And you can see here, if they got the auto gear in the center, they got a weight of, they got 1, and you apply it by 60. So if auto line had a weight of 5. So that's where I kind of used weights. And as you can see here, all right, let's not show comments. Yeah, so we applied weights. We had pivot averages, so all the stuff I just showed you, but on much bigger level. And as you can see here, there's tons and tons of data to analyze, and there's no way one sane person could just look at that and be like, I've got the stuff. So that's why you have to have, different graphs, stuff like that. So over here, instead of applying graphs, what I did was I just made different pivot tables, and I could just scroll down and see. That was kind of ineffective. It was really hard to look for things, but it worked out okay. Like over here, I have a form that just shows center gears, how often they did it, stuff like that. That's not, yeah. And that's just whatever. Yeah.
How do you feel, how important is it to you and to East Cobb to scout yourselves?
Oh, okay. So for scouting ourselves, that's a great question, by the way. I completely forgot that. To scout ourselves, I actually don't trust anyone else to do it. So I give everyone a break during our own matches, and I scout ourselves. Like I myself scout for that. So the reason you need to give everyone a break for that is because, let's be honest, they're not going to really focus on what other teams are doing when their own team are playing. So it's really important to give them a break, let them cheer for once, let them, because this is supposed to be fun. So we can't have them sitting there the entire time. So I would say give your most responsible person the job of scouting yourself, because it's really important, like over here, it's really important to scout yourself so that you can know how well you're doing compared to other people, so you can see what's the best fit. Yeah, so here there's tons and tons of stuff. Yeah.
What sort of scouting arrangement and stance is 49 Like, do you guys basically emulate 971s or 75 or what?
So that's kind of a sore spot for me. We use this. I'm that person. I'm that lonely person who just does all this stuff. But it works out okay. So fortunately, this one person, he graduated. He did qualitative scouting. He took comprehensive notes for me. So it was really a 7-person thing. We did not have a typist. I was the runner. I went back and forth. Unfortunately, we're a relatively big team. We have about 24 people on our team. So, and a lot of parents they're gracious enough to come during competition and support us. So it's really, really great when you can just say, here's a tablet, here's what each of these are, now scout, okay? That's really useful, and I can go back to the pits, back and forth. Now, I'm not exactly sure how 971 deals with the problem of not having Wi-Fi. So you can't just send a spreadsheet to them because they can't download it on Excel. But how I do it is we have like a tablet system set up, so I can get like the master tablet and show them all the stuff at once. So yeah, normally these 5 people, your scout, and then I'm the runner, the data analyst, the data enterer, and quality scouter.
How often do you miss data because you're running to other things?
Good question. I'd say I missed, out of every 20 matches, I capture about 16 to 17. Normally we miss 2 because of our own matches, and I just give 1 off just to in the beginning, just to let people get the feel of it. And sometimes people just wander off. So yeah, I'd say 16 to 17. But even if you only capture 10 of those matches, it's of enormous value. And especially on the second day, what I tend to do is I tend to ignore the teams which I know I won't be picking. Like if it's just until a line selection at lunch, I'll just ignore those teams. I'll tell my scouters to keep an eye on them in case they change something radically. But I'll limit those 30 teams down to top 20, and then I'll scout those only so more people can have a break as time goes on. Yeah.
So would you basically write down the data and like get the form, and then Steven here is like really puts it onto the spreadsheet. But for bid scouting and safety scouting, we've tried Google Forms. So would you find it more effective to get our data down to Google Forms, transfer it to the spreadsheet instead of having typos?
Yes, that's what I would do. Just a word of caution for pit scouting. People lie, which is, it's unfortunate. People exaggerate their own capabilities because, again, they haven't really had a chance to practice their robot on field. So maybe they might think that they're doing so-and-so, they're amazing. So far, I haven't really found a big use for pit scouting. I mainly do it so that I can break the rookies in, show them around, because another great advantage of scouting that I haven't even mentioned is getting people to know the lay of the teams. But if your team has found a way to use pit scouting and safety scouting, I would recommend that, use Google Forms and upload it to a spreadsheet when you have the time.
Do you have any tips for being better at qualitative scouting instead of being like, that's a good robot?
Yeah, let me show you some of my qualitative scouting, and I apologize if it's kind of offensive, but there's a lot of comments on here, okay? So I would recommend, this is kind of where the names come in, and if you notice that a person's not having their names put on there, I would recommend that you kind of hunt them down and say, hey, I notice you're just putting down pretty good. I would recommend that you give them an example to start with. Like, say, hey, this robot has a great drivetrain, or this robot does excellent defense. And they'll eventually branch off themselves, because to be honest, people will tend to, as time goes on, people will tend to share their thoughts on an entire robot and what they thought of a person, rather than just say good robot. And if you do have a person that just says good robot, I would recommend just saying stop. Yeah. All right. And yeah. All right. Any more questions? Okay.
All right, thank you so much, Aleem. A hearty round of applause for a great job done. Thank you so much all for coming, and thank you, Aleem, for presenting. I think this was a great TE session. I think there's a lot of valuable information. Thank you all. We will see you next Saturday.